Okay, I'm going to read a bit the first chapter in a book called Journey to the Heartland. It's in the series The Wolves of Time. It's a spiritual book series about a wolf pack, kind of symbolizing our own struggles in life, by William Horwood. I don't know how many books is in this series, but I like it. Chapter 1. The wolf theories of the Book of Pack decides it is he who must try to howl down the wolves of time. It was late summer, and high in the gorge country of the central Carpathian Mountains, a male wolf stood still at the edge of a rocky bluff, his eyes angry and his head shaking with frustration. He was no longer young, yet his stance was that of one who had not yet been accepted as an adult. The object of his anger, an old grey male, had laid down a little way off, the two other wolves with him, a female and another male. The ground was rocky and the air was hot and dry, but beginning to cool at the end of the hard day. All around them, near and far, were the rises and jagged cliffs of inhospitable mountains, their profiles softened and turned blue by the hazy atmosphere. Apart from the husks of dried grass and thistles, the only sign of vegetation lay deep in the gorge below where the lone male stood. There a river's torrent roared grey, blue and white, and stunted trees and ferns clung to rocks, wet with spray, dark with lack of direct sun. None of the wolves looked well or well fed, none of them looked happy. All seemed stressed, as if they had been under pressure from the combined force of other packs, of the menon and of the difficult climate and harsh landscape, not for days or weeks, not even for months, but for years. For decades, indeed. These 4 discontent wolves were the last of the Book of Pack, and their leader was the old wolf, who led them not by strength of body, but the strength of spirit. His name was Scale, and he was the redoubtable and ill-tempered father of the other 3, the angry male who stood staring now at the harsh landscape, as if in hope that he might find comfort there, was Tereus, a son in which whom his father seemed much disappointed. A dry and bitter wind blew at his pawns, spattered rock dust at his face, and whispered at the pale and patchy fur of the other 3 a little way below him. "You cannot, Wolf, you know that as well as I," said Scale, breaking their silence wearily. "And if you don't, you're even more of a fool than you've always been. Howling not a thing we do anymore if we want to survive. Howling gets heard by the mager wolf and by the menon. Your fool of a grandfather got killed by the menon after he howled a new moon down. Your mother, Wolfin bless her, died at the jaws of the Magyars after she howled some story of or other one night, and that not loudly. Yet still they heard it, and I could not save you all and her as well." Tervis gave up on the argument, shrugged and climbed away from the little pack to stand proud on the ledge overlooking the gorges where they made their secret home. There to brood in silence, to find space again, to wish he knew how to be angry, how to argue, how to win. Scale bowed his head. How his old eyes showed the pain of that night of terror, when he was forced to choose between herding and the 3 young ones to safety, or standing fast and protecting them all, including their mother, against odds too great for any of them to survive. Perhaps there never had been a choice, and their mother, who fought the Magyars long enough to allow Scale and the others to get up to safety in the gorges above their territory, had the consolation in death of knowing that her last surviving brother and the wolf she loved so dearly had got away and might still have a chance. The years had passed, and Scale felt burdened by the loss of his mate, but desolate and punishing through the years had been he had seen through the rearing of their young, and taught them to feel pride in being Bekovian, even if they were the last of their kind. Harsh though he often was, each of them knew in their own way that it was the love and fear for them that made him as he was, and that without him none of them would be alive. But now he was dying, his body growing thinner, his sleeps longer each day, his breathing worse, and all these familiar arguments were final ones with his young, who were the near-death approach, plain disappointment to him. Shaba was well enough, but she was female, and there was no Bekovian wolf to mate her but her own brothers, and it's in so small a pack with such inbreeding in the past, it was not suitable. Nor could she, or would she, take a Magyar to mate, partly because over the generation their tribe had all but killed her own, but also because for her to mate she must first make her way as leader of a pack, and that Magyar females would let her rise through their ranks, even had she the ability. Yet for all that, like any female, she harbored hopes of bearing young and seeing them grow strong. Then there was Tervi's brother Kubrat, his legs crippled and slow, his body twisted, and only his head whole and good. What a wolf he would have been, for his eyes was clear as spring skies, and his spirit great. And in him the dreams of Bekov might have been fulfilled, but he was cursed to be weak, and however great a spirit, however bright a mind, with such a body, what could he ever be? Loved, that was all, loved and watched over and listened to as well, for his gentle voice could turn dreams to reality for a time, and every ancient tale their mother ever told, he remembered and could retell. In him the spirit of the pack was still alive, and slow though he was, he had in more recent years become their focus. When times were heard in the need to think of him, to cover his back while he made his slow escapes, that kept them acting as one, as a pack always should. Which left poor Terrace as the only whole male, but one who had so far seemed sadly unsuited to the role. He was made well enough, though not as strong as Kubrat would have been. He talked and thought well enough, thought not as well as Kubrat, nor as imaginatively as his sister Shaba. He knew the territory and his roots well enough to well, but not as well as Scale wished him to. In short, Tervis was a disappointment, and Scale let him know it. There was one other quality Tervis had, which annoyed his father terribly, but which brought tears to his old eyes as well. For all the criticism he suffered, and the sense that he was not quite good enough, Tervis was loyal to each of them. He was kind, and if he complained, it was at himself and never at them. I could wish, Scale said, that day as Travis turned from the old argument about howling to be by himself, that he would be angry once in a while, or aggressive, or it's not in his nature, father, and never will be, explains Shaba for the 1000th time. He's a wolf born to care for others, not to lead. He knows it, and we know it, and all your complaints about him will never change that, nor destroy that. He's a wolf, continued Cuthbert, shifting himself clumsily to get a better view of Terrace, who will always think of his pack before himself. Cuthbert smiled towards his brother, his eyes pale, his affection warm as a summer's evening wind, his love as palpable and outspoken as the approach of night or day. He's a wolf much like your mother, consoled Scale, and I wish he would be angry with me for I treat him badly. But you, Cuthbert, can never lead us, and I wish I wanted. Scale followed Cubbert's gaze towards Tervis with something like despair. We all understand your suffering, said Cuthbert, his voice a little less gentle, especially Tervis. Why else do you think he puts up with you? Why, if you had threatened me as you treat him, I would not have let you get any away with it. There was an icy edge to Cubbert's voice before it softened, and a harsh look in his eyes before they grew gentle again. Yes, and you would have been a worthy leader, snapped back Scale, with a miserable nod that took in Cubbert's withered body and his weak and trembling limbs. Tervis is all we have, responded Shaba, but instead of making him more, you make him less. Well then, who cares for my view now, rasped Scale. You all know I'm dying, and you can fight about such things amongst yourself when I'm gone. A female, a cripple, and a weakling. Give me a day or two, 3 days at most, and then show my useless body over the gorge edge, and let it tumble to the rapids far below. Mind you, I won't have much to say to Wolf when I meet him, for what have I to show for the life I've had? Can you tell me that? As for Terrace, all he ever wants to do is howl down the stories of the past, just as his mother did, and look what you did for her. If you didn't tell him those tales, Cuthbert, and you did not sympathize, Shaba. Of course I sympathize, said Shaba, upset by her father's reference to Death and Wolf, and trying to ignore it. Cuthbert agrees with me, don't you, my dear? He may do, continued Scale, but then Cuthbert has more sense than to howl along and bring Magyar and Menon to us. We can whisper our stories and remember them. We can. Shaba shook her head. Father, we cannot, but all 4 of us. Terrace is the only one who honors our history sufficiently to want to risk the present by celebrating the past. Respect him for that at least. Respect him, cried Scale hoarsely, staring upslope to where Terrace still stood alone. I do respect him, and I love him, and as I love all of you, as your mother did. Nothing in all the world would give me greater pleasure than to hear him proudly howl down the story of the worlds of time to us, as it should be howled down, the form of it spreading out into the night sky, its line and shapes of tragedy and hope, of despair and coming triumph, echoing and re-echoing in the gorges hereabout, that I might for a moment forget that I am, which in all aligning frightened Bucko Wolf, and imagine what I might be, which is the father of wolves who will fulfill the Braconian destiny, and a destiny that now can never be, never. Don't let him howl for your father. It is the season for the howling down of the wolves of time. Yet for 3 seasons now none of us has done it, except mutely into the shadows and the caves where none can hear it, least for all the gods. Your mother died striving to hold down this mythic wolf. He coughed, almost choked, pushed Shaba away, and then said again, she did what I refused to do and died. Father, she told us that none could make that howl so well as you, and she thought that if she started you would be persuaded to continue it as it should be done. Did she say that? Croaked old Scale, and if he had not heard it before, as if he had not heard it before. You know she did, said Shaba patiently. Now Tervis wants to make the howl, which is the right and the strongest male, which is his right as the strongest male amongst us. We are or well placed here to escape should he be heard. The winds are petulant and strange, and will give no easy clue to any who might be listening as to where we are. Anyway, a bold howling of our most ancient tale will surely serve to remind the Magyars that we still are. I said such word to your mother the evening she died, and then refused to do it myself. Such persuasive words they were, and she began to howl until, anyway, Travis does not know all of that great howl. The tradition is already dead. Dying perhaps, father, yet not quite dead, said Kerber softly, just like you. Scale permitted a brief and bitter smile to cross his face. I wanted to see a buck of wolf set off for the Heartland, just as one was destined to do. One of our kind should have been there where the wolves of times came back. But the gods has never called us, and now it's too late. On the slopes above them, with the light of a late afternoon sun on his face, Tervis moved close to the gorge's edge. Suddenly light flecked at his head and in his eyes, and he turned to look down towards them. A light that sent a shiver down the spines of Shaba and Kubrat, but which the father did not see because he was not looking. He's no buck of wolf, muttered the father bitterly before wearily turning away from them, lying down and closing his eyes. Nothing left for us, he mumbled. Nothing but decline and loss. Nothing but death and the extinction of it all. But the others barely heard him. There was something about the way Tervis stared at them, something neither of them had seen before, and it was more than a trick of light that made him seem to bound in the air as he turned, trotted, and leapt down the slope to join them again. Feel better, rasped Scale, who, hearing him, sat up and turned to face him. A leader to the last, he seemed, wanting to impose himself. The expression of love for Tervis he had made but a short time before was now gone from his voice. Even as his son replied, Scale turned from him, uninterested in anything Tervis might say. So he did not hear Tervis mutter, I feel strange, not better. Then he went straight to Kubrat and shifted his back legs around a little, in a way so automatic and yet so caring that none who saw it would doubt either that he had done his little service 1,000 times before, or that he did it with love. The wind seemed to be freshening his head, turning to his sister, and yet it seemed uncertain. That was strange. What was strange, Tervis? She asked in a low voice. Was it something he saw? Tervis' gaze was somber, usually so, and he looked over at his father and said quietly, He looks ill, he looks old. The wind, Shaba, it whispered to me. Of what? Of impossibilities, which are... Shaba was less patient than Kerbert with such ambitiousness. She was matter-of-fact, preferred straight talk. But then Tervis said something strange indeed. What he said made her tremble and glance at Kerbert with such concern that he too shifted a little nearer. The father was mumbling to himself and staring about them as he often did before he slept, with worry and concern, and as if he expected Magyars and Manon to come storming out of the fissures in the rocks nearby. What Tervis said was this. The impossibilities you ask about are these. First, for me to howl down the story of the wolves of time, and second, to journey us all alone. That was what the wind whispered that I must do, Shaba. There are impossibilities, my dear. There are not impossibilities, he said. They are happening already. It was said so quietly, so surely, and she had never in all her life heard Tervis say something with such certainty. And are they not? She asked. In ancient times they believed that the wind was Wolf's own voice. I heard more than the wind whispering just now, Shaba. I felt Wolf's gaze upon me in the evening light, and I heard him call my name and command me to haul down the old story and journey westward. To the Heartland, she said faintly. I have been thinking, said Tervis very quietly, that before he dies, and whatever he may say, Father might like to hear us howl down the old tales, as Bucko wolves used to do. Tervis, you know that is the last thing he wants. She was shocked, for her brother has never been so outspoken or rebellious as this, nor so intimidatingly strange. It is the last thing he says he wants, said Kubrat. If that's what Tervis means, I agree with him. It is exactly what I mean, which is why I'm going to howl down the tales, and even the legend of the wolves and time, whatever he says. Naturally, I would prefer it if he gave me help, seeing as it's a howling I had never done before. But if he will not, well, I suppose I must try to do it alone. The wind flurried at their fur and tore at the heather near the gorge's edge. It carried grit and that spattered at the rocks above their heads, and it swirled and turned and dried their mouths. Tervis looked at her with something like terror in his eyes, but not the fear of one who is weak any longer and is unable to do what others can do. This was the fear of a wolf who has dared look into the future, and who knows his paws are set upon a way whose routes are uncertain and whose outcome quite unsure, yet who knows he must go forth. My dear, what is it you just saw just now? Tervis looked so strange, and the swirl of the winds was so unsettling that Herbert howled over to them incurringly. Yes, what is it, Wolf? He asked. But Tervis barely had need to answer, for the wind whispered about them, and the light was bright and strange, and it was his fur and in his eyes. He turned from them, looked out across the gorges, and said, Our time has come, Shaba. The Buckovis time is now. Kubrat, I know it, I feel it, and it is a river and spate that has caught me and will take me before another day is out. But what, began Kubrat. The time for talk is over, said Tervis, in a voice that might have been that of an elder who has heard all the arguments, considered them, and knows the time for action has come. Whole centuries of talking have come finally to now. He turned away from them and ascended the slope slowly to take up the proud and formidable stance he had before. He climbed into a golden evening sky. He climbed at the bidding of the whispering wind. In him, as he went, was suddenly all the pride and tradition of the Bucko pack. He stopped at the edge of the gorge, and watching him, it seemed to his sibling that he was a rock himself, and of the sky near and far, and of darkness and light. He raised his head to the sky, he opened his mouth, and he began to howl the first rants and strains of their ancient tale. In the distant days, when wolves roamed the earth alongside the man, one equal to the other, the wolf-ways crisscrossed all over Europe. They were the lifelines of the wolves, routes with pack wolves, secure in their belonging, used to find their way from rendezvous to rendezvous, or to lead them to safety when they were separated from the pack. Routes, too, by which the outcasts went as they drifted from one pack to another, and the routes on which the gods led themselves journeyed forth in the skies to watch over all of us. The wolf ways were first made by Wolf himself, greatest and most powerful of the wolf gods, as from time of him breaking off the rock that had entrapped him from the beginning of all time, to the season of his maturing and ascension to the stars, he marked out his earthly territory. Below him, old Scale stared up out of his slumber, turned and saw his son, his weak, disappointing son, proud above him, howling down the tales of old. No, no, he cried, you cannot. Help him, father, show him, said Kubert surely. Help him as you were surely going to help our mother the day she died. I cannot, and he must not. The Magyars, the Mannen, rasped Scale, his eyes wild with all the dangers he had always feared. Help him, father, urged Shaba, and Tervis continued, striving to find the right howlings for the tale he told. Give him your love now. He does not know what he howls is not right. It sounds all right to us, declared Cabrat. It could be better, it could sound more. Then go and help him, commanded Cabrat fiercely. Do it now. It is all he ever needed. Then as Tervis continued, his voice beginning to weaken for lack of another to accompany him, Skell climbed up to the light and grazed or showed up on his hand, muttering, No, my son, not like that, never like that. Here, I'll show you how to do it properly for Wolf's sake and my own. Then Skell raised his head, opened his mouth, and joined the howl, taking it on and up so powerfully, so truly, that Shaba joined them, and finally crawling up the slope, up into the light of evening and of Wolf, Cabrat added his voice to theirs, all four at all one, Bakovian across the gorges of the Carpathians, whose echoes joined them, and brought to that great prophetic howling to the skies the voices of all generations past which had ever howled down the story of the wolves of time. Out over Carpathia, on to the heartland of the Tatra, and then to north and south, to east and west, the howling would be heard by those who will be the wolves of time. The howling of the Bucko wolves is Wolf's call out to the life he has almost lost. The howling, courageously begun by Tervis, is the beginning of Wolf's last mortal birth. Listen now. Okay, so it's about a pack of wolves howling to call down their ancestors or something like that. It's a beautiful nature's tale with kind of relations to wolves being themes here. Another book recommendation. William Horwood, Journeys to the Heartland. The series The Wolves of Time. I'm going to try put a link on under this video if I can find it.